to infinity and beyond!
This is me. This is how I win.
Were you rushing or were you dragging? Answer!
You're a wizard, Harry.
Say what again? Say what again? I dare you.
No. I am your father.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
And here we go.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back inside the film room. I'm Zach Owens here with Johnny Sobchak for quite possibly the biggest weekend in movies of definitely of the year, potentially all time. Who's to say? Twitter would make you think that. It's Barbenheimer weekend. It has arrived. Barbie and Oppenheimer reviews. Johnny, how are we feeling about this momentous occasion in cinema?
Man, it really couldn't ask for much more, I would say, in terms of the hype, the anticipation, the delivery, the exceeding of expectations. It's been a great kind of celebratory period here, and it's not something we get, I would say, very often, or at least in this scale. So it'll be one to remember. There's no doubt about that. I'm excited to dive in and talk about them, both of these films, and they're both great films in my opinion. Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert, they're both great. No, it's been so fun. Just like, I know we had talked about it a little bit. Like, this has obviously been the topic of discussion for months leading up to it. The Barbie marketing campaign, all of the stuff that's been going on, people online talking about the two movies and which one you're going to see first, all that. And to finally, we talked about being like tired of it, just ready to see these movies, but then to actually see it happen, have these movies come out. And I don't know about you, I got to go to the screening of Oppenheimer, but then I was Thursday night, like 6 p.m. showing of Barbie at the theater. And like, I had people in there that were like, yeah, I haven't been to the movies in months. Or like, I couldn't tell you the last time I saw a movie. But for fans of movies and the theater going experience, like, it's so fun to see these crazy box office numbers, see people coming out, see 2:35 a.m. showings that Jake is sending us from LA of an Oppenheimer screening that starts at 2:30 in the morning and it's completely sold out. So those people are literally getting out of the theater at 5:30 in the morning and then going about their day. Like, it's a crazy time, and it's so refreshing and fun to see this after, the pandemic and everything and the resurgence of movies. So it warms my heart, my movie going heart.
Yeah, in terms of scale and the level of excitement and people dressing up and talking about the movie online, and
you had a costume change in the theater.
I did have some. I had something of a costume change. Yeah, I had my all black fit for Oppie, and then I had my all pink fit. I had the Docs with the Oppenheimer fit, and then I had the white Air Forces with the Barbie outfit. So I had it down. I had it down to a T. But yeah, I think in terms of, in the box office numbers support this. This is the first time ever that two movies have had an opening weekend on the same weekend of $80 million or more domestically. So that's first time ever two movies of this scale opening in the same weekend. And then in terms of all time, just numbers, weekend of this size, box office wise, that's going to be top 4 all time, I think. And that's only behind the likes of like Endgame and The Force Awakens and Infinity War.
Infinity War, Force Awakens, then second weekend of Force Awakens. We're the top 5 now. Isn't that crazy?
So, when we all remember how, and that's all pre-pandemic, of course. So this is something we haven't seen in literally years. And those other examples we just named, huge franchises, decades, years of anticipation. This is something totally unlike anything we've really seen. It's pretty much unprecedented. And again, it's just been such a fun it's been a fun long road, and I think some people like myself were getting a little tired of just the wait and all the talk around it. But once they actually arrived, I'm all smiles.
Absolutely. We are, well, I guess smiles at the experience of it all, maybe not at the subject matter of everything involved here. But we are talking Barbie, we're talking Oppenheimer, both those reviews coming up. But first off, we've got to plug everything. Johnny's got some stuff on the website. Go check out his Barbie and Oppenheimer heavy awards radar piece, looking ahead at what's to come for the Oscars next year. There's the Rewind newsletter. Make sure you're subscribed to that so you can get everything sent directly to your inbox. All of our podcasts, all of our written pieces, all of our interviews. We've got Ted Lasso, Shrinking, Schmigadoon, all of those Emmy campaign pieces on the YouTube page. Check it all out. And just, make sure you have Inside the Film Room in your life, because we're doing a lot of fun stuff right now. But Johnny, outside of Oppenheimer, outside of Barbie, what else have you been watching this week? I know there's been a lot going on. You've seen these movies multiple times already. So has there been time for anything else?
In the last week or so, my main priority was getting my rewatch finished of all the Nolan movies. So that was kind of the big thing I wanted to do. So I did that, and then I also watched, because I had heard a lot of comparisons and kind of maybe there had been some inspiration from Oliver Stone's JFK for Oppenheimer. And I had never seen it. I heard of it. I'm not super familiar with Oliver Stone. I think the only film of his I've seen is Born on the 4th of July, which is a great movie, and it's one of Tom Cruise's best performances. So I was curious. I didn't really know what JFK was about. Didn't really know who was in it. And I think that's a good way. If anyone is interested, I would certainly recommend the movie. Go back. Don't look anything up. Don't read about it. Just watch it. It's on Max right now, I believe. That's where I watched it. And so it's riveting. It's a great movie. Definitely has similarities to Oppenheimer. So if you're getting out of Oppenheimer, you want something similar before you maybe go back and rewatch Oppenheimer, just to get that comparison and see the influence there. And it's a great movie that just stands on its own as well. So even if you haven't seen Oppenheimer, don't really care about that so much, it's quite the film. And then outside of that, I also watched with Reagan. We binged right through HBO's The Night of, the miniseries, limited series from a few years ago now, and it stars John Turturro and Riz Ahmed. Those are kind of the two leads, and the supporting cast is really good as well. But pretty quick and I wouldn't say easy watch necessarily, but we breezed through it. It was definitely a binge. We did it in basically 2 days, 8 episodes, about an hour each, and it's riveting. Very, very good. Great limited series. I'm not going to go into again details or spoilers, because I think the less you know, the better. Because I certainly I wasn't fully aware of kind of where it was going and how the story was going to tell. But I really, really liked it. I think it's one of the better limited series I've seen, period. And for HBO's catalog, that's kind of saying something. So if I had heard of it when it came out, I saw it won some Emmys, but it just kind of passed me by. And so I'm glad it had been on my watch list for literally years. So I'm glad I finally went back and got to check it out. Definitely worth the time. But outside of that, I mean, it's been busy. I've been traveling. We've had the Oppenheimer and Barbie excitement. So that's pretty much all I've been able to really get into.
Still a good amount right there. But I'm pretty sure Rebecca watched The Night of back when it was on, but I had never seen it. So glad that you
would really like it, I think.
I mean, it is right up my alley as far as like the crime element of everything and all of that. But I've been in a different element. Righteous Gemstones, of course, season 3. Are you fully caught up yet? Or I know last time you were on the verge of being caught up.
Yeah, we're fully caught up at this point. And we got caught up like in the last couple of weeks. So I did mention that, but yeah, I'm excited about that. I'm loving season 3, and I'm excited as of right now. When we're recording this, the latest episode will be out tonight. So I'm looking forward to that later.
Yeah, that's been hysterical this season. BJ, man, what a wild episode last week for BJ trying to fight for his woman, for Judy Gemstone. That was something, man. I was not. This show has been like just absolutely wild and doesn't hold anything back. But that might have pushed things to a new extreme last week. So we'll see what the fallout is of that this week. I finally after waiting, I guess, a whole year and watching The Bear, I finally caved in. I tried to watch it a couple times and just like had watched the first episode, didn't dislike it, but just wasn't like other stuff happened. I never followed through with it. Now we're about done with season 1, going to dive into season 2 here soon, because I was like, well, if it's going to be potentially winning a lot of Emmys this season, I have to at least have seen it. So almost caught up there with season 1, then we'll dive into season 2, and then finished Hijack, which I believe the finale is this week on Apple. So a little bit ahead, but that's the Idris Elba on a plane, 7 episodes, 7 hours, pretty cool premise. And you know, I'm always down for some Idris Elba being suave. He's the negotiator on this plane trying to talk sense into the terrorists. So it gets pretty tense there. Movie wise, Barbie and Oppenheimer, of course. I rewatched Forgetting Sarah Marshall. Classic comedy there. Love. It's so weird to watch Shrinking and then be like, obviously, like, you know, Jason Segel from Shrinking, from How I Met Your Mother, but throwing it all the way back to for full frontal nudity and Forgetting Sarah Marshall. Just what a ride, what a career he's had. But absolutely hysterical. And it's also so funny to watch that movie that's from 2008, I think, maybe even before that's 2006. But 2008. But like look at it now and be like, okay, Jason Segel, Kristen Bell, Mila Kunis, all of these people were famous at the time, but now to just like look back on their careers, Russell Brand, Paul Rudd, Jonah Hill, Bill Hader, like all of the people that have these like smaller roles and are still just like, it seems like it's like, how did they get them? But now it's just looking back. We got Jason Bateman in like a post-credit scene. Kristen Wiig was in there. Kirk Fox, who was in Jury Duty. That's the he was in Parks and Rec. He was in Jury Duty as the like, I don't even remember what his role was, because he was the guy that Ronald was able to like sort of recognize because he said he was a Parks and Rec fan.
Yeah.
And so they had to pull him back. He's in there for a little bit. So I don't know, just such a star-studded cast in a classic movie. So that was fun to revisit. And then also rewatched. It's been a while. Our last review was Mission Impossible, and we were talking about wanting to rewatch it, get back for a second viewing. I saw that again, and I saw it at the IMAX Discovery Place Dome. Was not as bad as you guys made it out to be. The projection quality was great. The sound was great. Yes, it was a little wonky on the edges, of course, because it was a dome, but it was I'm not upset that I did it. It was not, you know, like a Chinese theater
That's good.
IMAX experience, but it was still a good time. So especially I did get there. I got there a little bit late and I had to sit on the edge, and that was not good. I would not have enjoyed that. But then during the opening sequence and like before they hit the intro with the theme music, I was able to make a power move and find a seat in the middle. So I was able to adjust on the fly there.
Good call.
But still really enjoyed that movie. If you haven't listened to our last episode where we break down the full review, go ahead and do that for Mission Impossible. But shall we get into a little Barbenheimer?
Let's do it.
I think let's start off light with Barbie. Then we'll dive into the weight of Oppenheimer afterwards. But Barbie, if you've been living under a rock and don't know what this is, it's the latest movie from director Greta Gerwig. We've got an all-star who's who of celebrities here. Margot Robbie is the main Barbie, the original, or what's she called? What's the descriptor of her version of Barbie?
Stereotypical Barbie.
I was gonna say original. Stereotypical Barbie. We've got Ryan Gosling as the main Ken. America Ferrera playing a character from the real world. We've got Weird Barbie, Kate McKinnon, President Barbie, and Issa Rae. Will Ferrell as the CEO of Mattel. Michael Cera as Alan. What a king. But then there's just so many other people. You know, there's like 800 versions of Ken, 800 versions of Barbie, so many different ones. It's just a who's who of stars. But that's what Barbie is. We've got a 90% critic score, 90% audience score, very well received. It's literally blowing up the box office. Johnny, I know you're somewhere in the 4-star range. What kind of score are we looking at here?
Yeah, I thought it was great. I had a really fun time with it. Definitely need to see it again. I think the common denominator between these two movies, which there's maybe more of those than you would imagine, is that they're dense. They're packed with story and themes and characters, and it's a lot to digest. So I definitely have to see both again to really get a grasp on them. So these ratings are subject to change, but I would say this is like a strong 4 out of 5 for me. I really had a good time with it. I think I put this on Twitter. I think it was the most fun I've had in the theater pretty much all year, just pure fun. Never really knowing what was going to come out of anyone's mouth next or where the story was necessarily headed. So, yeah, I just had a really good time with it.
I am right there with you. I'm at like a 3.5, but borderline 4. I gave this a 78 out of 100. So if you do the math, that's very close to an 80 out of 100, which would be 4 out of 5. So I'm with you. It was a whole lot of fun. I had no idea. Like, obviously, we had seen so much about this, but I feel like I was still very surprised as to like what the actual premise and plot was here. I very much thought going in. Well, let me say real quick. Barbie suffers a crisis that leads her to question her world and her existence. That's the little log line. But in the trailer, it seemed a whole lot like Barbie's in Barbie Land. Something goes wrong. She has to go find purpose in the real world. And so I thought a lot of this was going to be like majority Barbie in the real world, sort of like hijinks ensue. But I did not anticipate the whole go to the real world, come back to Barbie Land, the whole storyline with Ken and what happens in Barbie Land. Like I was very surprised and enjoyed a lot of where it went. And, with such an all-encompassing marketing campaign where you can't get away from Barbie for a half second, the fact that there were still so many delightful surprises in what we were able to get, that was a huge win for me.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that they did a good job. Obviously, the marketing has been at full saturation for weeks now, it seems like, and the marketing wasn't purely trailers and TV spots and behind the scenes stuff, so that certainly helped. But I think they did a good job in the marketing team of balancing what they showed and what they didn't show and what they hinted at and things like that. So I wasn't able to fully get like ahead of it. It was always a little bit ahead of me, and I think that was a good place to be in. Especially kind of maybe in my head, I thought I kind of had it figured out, but ultimately I really enjoyed where they took it. Definitely, I think bolder than I would have expected, and maybe kind of subversive in some ways. But yeah, definitely a one where I think it helps knowing less. But even if you've seen a lot, I don't think that's going to hurt you in terms of surprises.
No, I agree. I will say for me, the reason that it was a little lower, I feel like it took me a minute. There was just like so much going on at the beginning. I feel like for me, I was like still settling in for a long time until about like halfway through the real world adventure. Basically, like when we get the team up with America Ferrera's character and like everything, when they figure out the purpose of like, oh, we have to go back, all of that. I feel like that's when it really hit its stride for me, because from then on, you've got like the Barbie knows her mission. Ken has like transformed into the patriarchy Ken, and we get everything that has been taken over in Barbie Land and all of that. So I feel like for me, I was still figuring it all out, and then once we hit that, it was like, okay, now we're having a great time and everything is rolling smoothly, full cylinders. So I don't know, were you, for you to say that this was the most fun you've had at the theater all year, were you in from the get-go, or does any of what I said ring true with you as well?
I was pretty much in from the jump. I would say, honestly, I think maybe the first 30 minutes or so, like, might be the strongest part of the movie for me, or maybe like at least maybe the most fun part of it. I think it has good endings, like a good ending, like section, like maybe like the last 20 minutes or so, and also the beginning, like 20 to 30 minutes. I think the setup and like the resolution, I think, are to the film's benefit. Doesn't fall flat in either of those for me, but the opening especially, I thought, was, again, just from the beginning, I wasn't sure how the movie was going to start. I wasn't sure like how they were going to introduce the universe or how it was going to make sense in combination with our real world.
I did like how they were essentially
just
like, don't worry about it. Like, they're like, we're not going to make sense of any of this, and you shouldn't have to work. Like, it's not, they weren't like, oh, we have to come up with this intricate lore of the multiverse and the parallel universes and how you get from one to the other. And it's just like, this is just a thing that happens, and everybody just went along with it. That was funny to me.
Yeah, I agree. I'm glad that they didn't get too bogged down in the logic, or lore, as you said, the world building, so to speak. Even in Barbie world proper, I feel like we got a decent amount of it. We got a decent idea of what it's like, but they don't like go overboard in terms of even the geography of Barbie land. They just kind of show off Barbie's dream house, her little cul-de-sac, her neighbors, and then
Beach.
also like the beach. Like those are the kind of the two primary locations. So you get a little flavor of everything else, but I think they did a good job of not going overboard trying to be too specific, which I think could have made it a little exhausting in some ways, and just it wasn't really necessary to enjoy the movie and kind of run along with it.
I know obviously Margot Robbie is the star here. For me, she's amazing. She's fantastic. I have always been a huge Margot Robbie fan. I was kind of surprised at the I don't want to say underutilization because she is the main character, but you know, like America Ferrera gets the big signature Greta Gerwig monologue, and Ryan Gosling has like not all, but like a ton of the humor. Kate McKinnon is hysterical. I feel like I wish there had been more Barbie, which seems like redundant to say because there's so many Barbies and there's so much focus on her. The whole movie is about her. But I feel like Margot Robbie ate up everything that she had that I wanted her to have even more. I don't know if I'm the only one who thought that. If I don't know. I feel like that was an unpopular opinion, that more people were satisfied with like everything that they got from her. And I was very satisfied with what we got. I just wanted more. And I don't know if that's just me being such a big Margot Robbie fan or if that's valid.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to disagree, Zach. I am not as I think that's an interesting difference, is that I really do like Margot Robbie, and I do, you know, I love, for example, Wolf of Wall Street, you know, which was her big breakout role. Babylon, which I know is pretty divisive. I'm certainly a big fan of that. I think it's an amazing movie that got, you know, overlooked and is underrated, basically. And I think, you know, she's great as Harley Quinn, and the Suicide Squad is one of my favorite comic book movies from James Gunn. So I think she's great. I think struggles to get into the best roles sometimes and is underutilized by filmmakers sometimes. But here I thought, so I don't always go in expecting like the most from her, like the best from her necessarily. But I think here I was actually pleasantly surprised, because I was very much expecting it to be like, okay, everyone's doing like really well. Margot Robbie's like part of that, but maybe one or two other people like really steal the show and run away with it. Ryan Gosling being maybe the primary candidate for that, which he is fantastic in the movie, of course. I don't think Ryan Gosling is as necessarily fantastic or as funny as even he is in The Nice Guys, for example. Or,
oh, well, that's just a masterpiece.
You know,
that's unfair.
a combination of other films that I think he's fantastic, and he's still great in this movie. But I thought Margot Robbie was just as great, honestly, in a lot of ways. I mean, she has kind of a balance of kind of, there's like a very tender quality to her character, and the way that it's kind of balancing this earnestness and this vulnerability that you don't necessarily see in other roles that she has, because she always has to like put something on, it seems like. But in this, because she is Barbie going through a crisis, she is very exposed and very vulnerable, which I think I really enjoyed seeing Margot Robbie kind of take advantage of that. And she, of course, she's still playing Barbie, and especially in the opening part of the movie, the first 15-20 minutes, when she's, you know, A-okay and everything's perfect, she looks great. She's, you know, doing dances, and she just is like the perfect stereotypical Barbie. But then she goes through this kind of arc, and you see her down in the dumps. You see her totally kind of at the mercy of what she's going through, this experience. And I thought Margot Robbie, she doesn't have a big monologue necessarily like the other characters maybe get, or she doesn't have like, you know, all the best jokes or like a standout like sing along kind of moment like maybe Ryan Gosling as Ken has. But I thought that she was doing things just a little bit more like subtly, and also she has a lot of, more than any other character, and I think this is her big advantage, is there's a lot of close-ups with her. And I think she does so well, and there's several key moments where the camera just is locked in on her face and it's her reacting to something or processing something internally. And I think she just does a really good job. Now, a lot of times that is in reaction to something, but it's still, I think, a good job of telling kind of what the character's going through and expressing it. And I thought overall, I was very happy with. And she has some great quips. She has some great one-liners. She's very funny in the movie.
I
But
feel like
yeah, I don't agree.
I feel like what I feel like I did a poor job of explaining, not explaining, but like of the message that I'm trying to get across. And I think you've helped me out here that there, as I said, like I thought she was amazing and I loved everything we got from her. I feel like it was more of a like she was so good, consistent across the board. What I guess what I feel like is there was not like, what would you say was her standout moment? Like you said, Ryan Gosling had the Kin song, America Ferrera has the monologue. Like I feel like she was just like, it was consistent across the board. There was never like, oh my God, wow, that was Barbie. Like that was Margot's like shining moment as Barbie. She was just like fantastic, just all the way through, which I guess that's what I'm saying. I wish, for me at least, I didn't have a moment where I was like, oh my God, that was it. So I feel like that's what I was looking for or hoping to have, of like, this was it. This was the moment for her. So I don't know if I just missed what other people see as that moment, or if it wasn't.
I don't think, I mean, I have to see the movie again, honestly. I can think
Agreed,
of a
same.
couple different things, but overall, I would say that she doesn't necessarily have, again, she doesn't have a monologue like America Ferrera has. She doesn't have a musical sequence necessarily like Ryan Gosling has. But the movie, while there is a lot of attention paid to these other characters and especially Ken, I think the movie does really ride on her back and her shoulders pretty much from beginning to end. And she just totally embodies this stereotypical, like the essence of the stereotypical Barbie. And also, and if you want to talk about a specific moment that people will remember and think back on, I think you could look maybe to the end of the movie as something where she just, again, it goes to the earnestness that Margot Robbie plays it with. It could feel so, I don't want to say like, I don't even know what the word is I'm looking for necessarily. It could seem so like, again, a kind of put on or like very like SNL, like skit, like type of feel to it. But she plays it like so, like she balances things so well and she walks the line where it actually like the lines hit and like the ideas of the scenes that seem so ridiculous, they do like work, I feel like. Because she is like so like wrapped up in like embracing it basically. So I just think, yeah, just the way she goes from being perfect, everything's great, you know, day to day. That opening scene with like the title sequence and like the opening credits, like where she's going through Barbie land and she's seeing everyone and everyone loves her.
Right.
Like, I think that was just like perfect, like quintessential, like Barbie, what you would imagine for Margot Robbie. And then you have, again, her going through this big arc. She's up, she's down, she's all around. And then as she kind of comes to these, you know, there's a few key moments along the way. But I think overall for me, it was just more the way she carried it. Like, I don't really, like, I don't know if there's anything else that specifically I would point to, but I think she does have great moments. Again, the close-ups, like when she's on the bus stop bench, when she is meeting the
realizing all of
creator
her
of Barbie.
Emotions.
When she's processing everything at the end and deciding to leave Barbie Land behind. I think there's just those kind of touchstone moments, but they aren't necessarily big show-stopping sequences like some of maybe a couple other characters got.
Yeah, that's valid. I will say, I mentioned her a minute ago, but Kate McKinnon, this was a return to form for her, in my opinion, because I feel like she obviously was a legend on SNL for so long, but as far as movies go, there had never been a role where she was able to like, I don't know, I don't want to say never because I don't have her entire filmography in front of me, but I feel like she had never been able to like have that the channel the same quirkiness and weirdness that made her so hysterical on SNL. It was always some sort of like overplayed to a degree, or the role didn't fit well. But here I feel like it was the perfect match. And Weird Barbie was one of my favorite characters. She was absolutely hysterical.
I agree. I totally agree. I think she is someone who hasn't really been utilized as well, like after SNL, or even before that. And I think she definitely stood out as one of the strong points. She just had a great weird energy that she brought to it that none of the other characters really had.
And it was such a great use of her physical comedy as well, because
Yes.
the
Yeah.
like the way she was able to embody like the doll movements so well, and the splits and all of the like the way that they just like perfectly encapsulated the version of the toy. Like it was almost like one of Sid's toys from Toy Story, of like this mutilated, disturbed toy that has been drawn on and chopped up
Yeah.
and just cut from like the actual toy version to her. It was the perfect way to bring that to life. So I was very pleased to see that, and I hope that she can continue on the right path of roles here to be able to channel that same humor that made her so popular on SNL. But I know I, for one, thought I had a solid plan for a Halloween costume prior to seeing this, and I regret to inform you that I will be one of the millions of people dressing as Ken. But I feel like there's options here. You know, you got so many, the
Oh,
production
certainly.
design, the costumes, everything here is to the max. There's so many variations and all of the different versions of Ken. But I I I guess my Halloween segue was to get into just the pure beauty of this world. And I love all of the I saw a
Yeah.
behind the scenes video today. I don't think I sent it into the group, or if you've seen it, but it was like how they filmed the car sequence where they're traveling from Barbie Land
Yes.
to the
Yep.
real world, and it's like the conveyor belt of different props and everything of the lands that they're passing through, and it was super impressive. But I thought everything, as expected, was incredibly visually appealing here.
Yeah. No, I agree. I thought that, you could get an idea from the trailers and everything of how well it was done recreating the world of Barbie, but seeing it and seeing all the props and just the different parts of Barbie land, and of course the wide variety of costumes, the costume design and production design are certainly the standout qualities of the film. I thought cinematographer Rodrigo Prieto did a great job, kind of, I think there's a great contrast between Barbie land and the real world. I think the real world's pretty kind of washed out and kind of gray, versus the bright poppy pink and pastels of Barbie land. So I thought that was kind of a fun contrast. And then just the way they kind of use different, as you mentioned, kind of the traveling to and from Barbie land, there's some really fun visuals there, and the way they depict that I thought was really well done. And all this, of course, is on the back of Greta Gerwig directing it and co-writing it with Noah Baumbach. I think that the direction, this movie could have been a total utter disaster, one way or another. But I just think what Greta Gerwig brought as the director and helming the entire project, keeping everything in line, having such a strong vision, and then also what she did, I'm sure, on the page with Baumbach, and getting the right balance of jokes, but also having some earnestness to it, and having the emotional base to it, which especially comes in heavy during the kind of back half or like final third of the film. I just think that she more than anyone else, certainly deserves the credit for this movie and the success that it's going to see, because you know Margot Robbie, fantastic as Barbie. Ryan Gosling as Ken, hard to imagine anyone else, and the supporting cast and everyone else, the crew involved. But Greta Gerwig, it really does come back to her and how she thought was the best way to go about making a Barbie movie and making it relevant and kind of reinventing Barbie to some degree, but also paying homage to the classic toy and what we've seen over the
Mm-hmm.
years and decades with that in pop culture. I think it was just it surprised me in some ways. It was still kind of what I thought it was at times, but I think it just has it's a lot of balancing going on. It's a big balancing act. And I think that she does do a good job. But I would say also, Zach, in terms of, you mentioned already that you thought maybe Margot Robbie didn't have like a standout moment or something that you thought was like really kind of put her over the top, that maybe she was a little bit underserved, like in the lead role? Was there anything else in the movie that you thought, I mean, you didn't like it as much as I did, it sounds like. So I'm just curious if there was anything else in particular that you know, had any issues with or thought maybe could have been done better. Cause I have some complaints. They're a little bit more mild. I don't think this movie, and I'm certainly not someone who's an authority on Barbie, and I'm not, the authority on the female, experience or anything like that. But I certainly don't think it's a masterpiece. I think it's a very fun, very well made studio comedy, essentially. But that's now a blockbuster. But I'm curious to hear if there's anything else that maybe we could agree on, or if you see anything, that you could, or curious about seeing it maybe on rewatch, seeing if it improves for you.
Yeah, I feel like rewatch, I definitely want to have a second watch here. I feel like it was more what I had addressed earlier of like the beginning portion of settling in and trying to figure out like, okay, where are we going with this? That on a second watch, I feel like my head was just spin. I was overwhelmed with all of everything to take in from all of the Barbie land and the different characters and all of just everything that was going on. That I feel like on a rewatch, that'll be much more enjoyable, knowing where we're going and able to just sit back and enjoy it. But honestly, like, I can't think of anything in particular that was something that I had a gripe with or anything like that to point out as flaws here. I agree with you that it's not a revolutionary piece of cinema of filmmaking, but I still very much enjoyed it and had a lot of fun with it. And I know, like, it may sound like I was not a fan, but I was. This is still a 78 out of 100, a 3.5, almost 4 stars for me. But I wanted to ask you, as anyone who's followed along on the website, you released the mid-year 2024 Oscars predictions.
Yes.
2 weeks ago at this point, and
yeah,
Barbie had gone from being a likely contender in a lot of categories to then, when you published this prior to seeing the movie, went down to only being nominated twice and winning twice, I think, for production design and costume design. So I'm curious now, having seen it, are you going to be reevaluating those 2 nominations, 2 wins, and bumping it up further, especially with all the critical and commercial success, or are you holding strong where you currently have it?
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked that, because yes, right up until I was getting ready to finish writing that and publishing it, I did have Barbie, and I had Barbie pretty much in this position, for the last few months, like in the beginning part of the year. I thought it could definitely be in the best picture conversation. I thought, adapted screenplay, certainly production design, costume design, as we've mentioned, original song, maybe a couple nominations in that category potentially, depending on how the rest of the year looks. But for some reason, the vibe I was getting from like the early reactions, and I figured just as things kind of, we learned more or saw more from the movie, I thought maybe, well, this could be maybe more divisive potentially. Maybe it won't be as widespread or as appealing to certain areas. I thought, well, let me be a little bit more reserved. Let me kind of rein it in a little bit. And so I did limit it to just production design and costume design, because I thought for sure those are going to be strong contenders there. And I think it could still certainly win both of those categories, although there is heavy competition in both. Now, having seen it, I do think, and seeing, of course, the box office and the cultural impact that it's already having, and also the money it's making, I do think I'm more leaning towards my initial thoughts that it could be in the best picture conversation, not necessarily to win, but certainly being a nominee. And of course, again, those higher, other categories like, adapted screenplay, maybe even Ryan Gosling in supporting actor, in that conversation. Margot Robbie, have to see how the rest of the year pans out. I don't know necessarily if she would be in there for a nomination, but she, should certainly be in the conversation for now. I am leaning more towards that. So next time I do a write-up, which will be, I'm going to wait until we get a better idea of what's going to happen with the fall release schedule, because there's a lot of rumors and news reports going around right now, and the fall festivals have to make their decisions. I will do another one here in the next couple of months, and we'll see where that is. But I still am skeptical about whether Barbie can get into that best picture field, but it has 10 slots now. So, the odds are definitely in its favor, but we'll just have to wait and see if the Academy overall will embrace.
I feel like as the non-Oscar expert, obviously, that is your title, that there's a good chance, a good chance of success here because like obviously we're seeing the critical and commercial success right now that it's having, and that it's obviously got the pedigree with Greta Gerwig, Noah Baumbach. You've got Gosling and Robbie and stars across the board that have had success with the Academy in the past. So I feel like knowing how much money this thing is making, that the Academy, like for people that are trying to, the campaigns that have been like, oh, well, why didn't Black Panther win, or why didn't like the popular movie category that they were looking to make, that this is like the right blend of them being able to be like, oh, you want a popular movie, this is the one, because it has that prestigious background, the prestigious people that have made this, but also being the biggest movie of the year, potentially just blowing up theaters, that could make it a recipe for, like you were saying, to sneak in there with the best picture race, with acting nominations, with the stuff that we already had it down for, with production design, costume design, all that stuff.
Yeah.
That it's the perfect storm for it.
Yeah, no, I think you're totally right. Non-Oscar expert. That the I think that this is, as you said, a perfect storm. I think there's lots of possibility. I mean, we still have to see how the rest of the year is going to shake out. As I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of rumors spinning around right now that there could be things getting delayed. If something like The Color Purple and Dune Part 2, if one of or both of those movies get pushed into next year, that makes Barbie a surefire bet to get in. One of my biggest reservations, I shared this on Twitter, before I wrote that piece or as I was publishing it, was that Warner Brothers, they would have Dune Part 2 as maybe their biggest contender, The Color Purple also in that same Christmas window or holiday window, and then Barbie. And I don't know if any studio has ever had 3 movies nominated for Best Picture in the same year. I'm sure it's happened, but it's very rare, if it has happened. And so it would be very impressive. It'd be amazing if that were the case. Now, one of those movies could disappoint, Color Purple maybe, or Dune gets delayed, something like that. Then yeah, of course it makes even more sense and is more likely that Barbie gets in. But I just think Barbie, again, from my feeling, my point of view, I think it's a great movie. I had a great time with it. It has outstanding elements within the movie. I think, again, costume, production design is the 2 highlights. And those are certainly Oscar worthy, awards worthy. We still have a lot of time left in the year. As of right now, I think this is one of the better films that I've seen in the year so far, maybe top 5 or so. But by the year's end and going to the Oscars next year, like as of now, I just don't think it would be a Best Picture contender or nominee. I don't think it would need that. And I think that overall as a film, I just don't think it would need to be, or would even deserve necessarily, quote unquote, to be in that conversation, just because there's so many other great films that we have to yet to see, and even films that we've gotten so far, like Across the Spider-Verse, Past Lives, things like that. And of course, Oppenheimer, which we're about to talk about. There's just a lot of other things that have, again, the cultural impact, I think, is going to be the main conversation point for Barbie and its box office performance. But Oppenheimer is a blockbuster. That's going to certainly be in the Best Picture race. Dune Part 2, if it doesn't get delayed, that'll be another blockbuster that's also going to be in that conversation. So, and Across the Spider-Verse, that's another populist pick potentially that could get in. So how many populist and quote unquote, blockbuster movies are they going to usually? We don't see that many. It's not usually 3, 4, 5, you know what I mean? So again, it's I'm not convinced, but I'm more optimistic than I had been, a week ago.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think you're right on target, as always, Oscar expert. But any final thoughts on Barbie before we change gears and switch over to Christopher Nolan and a little Oppie action?
Whew. Man, No, no, I think we'll leave it at that. It's a very good movie. I had a great time with it. I'm looking forward to seeing it again. I will definitely see it in theaters again, probably next weekend, second weekend. I have a couple family members that still want to see it that haven't seen it yet, so I'll make the trip with them, and I'm looking forward to again digesting it and seeing more, maybe picking up on things, seeing if it improves or maybe even if it gets a little bit worse. But I'm just glad to see it was a success and it largely, if not totally, lived up to the expectations.
Agreed. I will, like I said from the top, the movie going experience of all of this is so fun and exciting to see these people that have not gone to the movies regularly, that haven't been in years, to come out and see this, and to be, in a packed theater, that you're looking at the AMC app and on a, random Tuesday night, it's still packed. So it's very exciting to see just everybody coming out to the movies. This is, like you said, a good time, a lot of fun. I'm excited to rewatch it again. I'm excited to go see it with Rebecca and hear her thoughts on it, because I'm sure she'll be a big fan. But let's change it up here and talk Oppenheimer. This is the latest from Christopher Nolan, following up Tenet after the everything that was. Johnny, you did not have to drive 3 hours, 4 hours round trip, whatever it was, to go and see Oppenheimer this time.
It was 8 hours round trip. Zach,
Oh,
let's be specific.
excuse me. I did not mean to diminish your COVID travels to find the only open movie theater where you can see it. Much easier experience this time for Oppenheimer. We've got another star-studded cast here. So many names. I had to leave some out because I didn't want to just be reciting them for the entire episode. But Cillian Murphy, Emily Blunt, Matt Damon, Robert Downey Jr., Kenneth Branagh, Florence Pugh, Benny Safdie, Rami Malek, Dane DeHaan, Alden Ehrenreich, Jason Clarke, to name a few. Again, there are so many. It's just like Barbie, where people are popping up left and right, and you're like, have to do a double take. Like, was that Josh Peck? Oh my God. Like the is that Jack Quaid playing the bongos? Like what it's just a who's who of people here. But this currently sits at, just like Barbie was matched critics and audience score both at 90%. Critics and audience both have this on Rotten Tomatoes at 94%. I'm right there with them. I'm at 95% actually, so one degree higher. But this is a 5-star movie for me. I was thrilled, I was highly anticipating it, but also very nervous, because obviously love Christopher Nolan, but as I had told you all, Dunkirk is one of my lower Christopher Nolan movies, and this was obviously the closest comparison in just being a true story, being in the historical genre. That's the only thing. It's obviously closer to that than it is to Interstellar. That had me hesitant to be like, is this going to be something that I am not as high on because it's in the same vein as a Dunkirk? But with that hesitation in mind, I feel like what we got here and how much I enjoyed it, that only enhanced it, knowing that I was scared, but then I got something that just blew me away, both literally and figuratively. But Johnny, what kind of score are you looking at here before we get into the in-depth discussion?
Yeah, this is kind of a little bit of a reverse from Barbie, because I was a little bit higher on that than you, although you still really liked it. You're a little bit higher on this than me, even though I still really liked Oppenheimer. I'm seeing it again today, as I think we maybe mentioned earlier. So I already know I'm going to go higher on it. I feel like, because the more and more I've thought about it, and the more I've read about it and digested it, like it's so astounding and such an achievement. I'm just really high on it. So I would say a 90 or so, or north of 90 potentially. But yeah, it's a lot of movie, as you mentioned, a lot of actors, a lot of big cast, 3 hours long. And yeah, it demands multiple viewings, I think, even though it is heavy, material. I think it deserves, at least a couple watches, especially if you can catch it in theaters or in IMAX, especially IMAX. I don't know about you, Zach, but I absolutely was shaken, literally and figuratively, by the experience. I mean, the true experience. This isn't just going and sitting and watching images on a screen. It physically shakes you. The sound, the feeling of the images just washing over you. My brother, when we saw it on Thursday night, it was literally, I think, 10 or 15 seconds into the movie, and the sound and the images, the initial images of the film. I mean, we just looked over at each other and like we're like, oh man, we are really in for
We're
it,
back, baby.
in the best way possible. Yeah.
No, I totally agree with you. It was very just engrossing movie. It was something, man. Let me give the plot synopsis here for those unfamiliar. During World War II, Lieutenant General Leslie Groves Jr. appoints physicist J. Robert Oppenheimer to work on the top secret Manhattan Project. Oppenheimer and a team of scientists spend years developing and designing the atomic bomb. Their work comes to fruition on July 16, 1945, as they witness the world's first nuclear explosion, forever changing the course of history. I am not, as I mentioned with the Dunkirk comparison, I'm not really a history person in general. Like that was always a subject in school that I was least interested in. Dreaded having to take history classes in college when I did. But I know, boo me. I'm an uncultured man. But so that also played into just like the general interest here. Like I would much rather, if it were up to me, as I said to you, like this movie's fantastic, 5 stars. I loved it. I said this afterwards though, but like I would still prefer to watch Interstellar just because that's like I'm a sci-fi guy. Like that's much more fun for me, like subject matter wise. So with all of that in mind, I was very, very just amazed by how intense this was and how much I was just fully engrossed in it, because it is very much a lot of just people talking. There's obviously events that unfold, but a lot of it is like just dialogue driven. We're cutting back and forth between, you know, the development of the bomb and then the present day hearing and everything. And so I feel like the way that that was probably what impressed me the most, was the ability, the editing decisions and the direction to make this so engaging and so like edge of your seat thriller almost, but all it is still conversations happening, and to make that feel so tense and so exciting, that's something that in lesser hands would not be able to be as engaging as this was. And that is what I should have not doubted Christopher Nolan and considered him less. I didn't consider him lesser hands by any means, but just in general, that the concept of that is something that's like not necessarily like, let's go see this great blockbuster at the movies, but that's what this is turning out to be. Like with the just like Barbie, theaters are packed, sold out. You know, you can't get a spot to go and see this. But I don't know, that was probably overall one of my first thoughts exiting the theater, just like how impressive the ability to turn what this was into the cinematic experience that we got.
Right. Yeah. It is like a little miracle. You know, Oppenheimer has his miracle that he's performing in the movie, and Nolan basically took it upon himself to perform a little miracle by making this 3-hour, you know, historical biopic. It's really heavy on science, really heavy on politics. You know, there's nudity, there's lots of swearing, F-bombs. And some of it's in black and white. It's back and forth with the 2 different narratives, like you were talking about. And it all is, you know, it looks like it's going to play out to the tune of $600 to $700 million on $100 million budget. I mean, it's very difficult to like wrap my mind around what Nolan has actually achieved here. And not to mention, that's just the financial side of it, the artistic, you know, artistic to commercial viability of it. That's not to mention all the awards and nominations and wins that this movie is going to get. And it's already moving up the ranks in terms of the best picture conversation and best director and acting nominations. And you know, it's going to be a really fun, you know, rest of the year and, you know, award season coming up, because there's really some high profile films in the mix. And this is certainly going to be, you know, chief among them.
Absolutely. I know you mentioned the nudity, though. That's one thing that has been there've been a lot of headlines around this, a lot of discourse already. That being one of them. People were way too horny online. I saw there was one article that was like, we need to talk about this sex scene. This is not what we were promised, because in like one interview they said prolonged full frontal nudity, and it's okay, I'm sorry, but I remember I had people tweeting at me after I had posted my social reaction on Tuesday night after the screening that were like, "How was the sex scene?" And I'm like, "Please, people, please calm down." But it was the answer to that question for any listeners out there was that it's nothing egregious. It's not anything, that you haven't seen on screen before. It wasn't some, it wasn't anything that I was very much overplayed and overhyped into what people were anticipating. But another one of these big headlines here is like you mentioned, the acting performances. I know Robert Downey Jr. specifically has gotten a ton of praise. I believe in our discussion in the group chat, you said good, not great, not going to be, you don't foresee him being a supporting actor nominee.
Robert Downey Jr.
Yes.
I
no,
I definitely do.
Okay, my bad.
What I said is
Apologies.
that I didn't think it was my favorite. I thought he was great, but I didn't think he was like unbelievably like knockout great. Again, I do have to see the movie one more time at least to really get more solid thoughts on it. I do think it's a great performance, and I see why he's going to get nominated.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, it feels like it would be more of like a legacy like Oscar win if he ends up winning, versus like, oh, this performance is just so good that he like has to win. I think there are going to be more great supporting performances. I do think it's going to benefit that this is going to be an overall weaker year in that category, at least from what I can tell. I would say his other biggest competition is going to be Robert De Niro, Killers of the Flower Moon. Now he already has 2 Oscars, so they're probably not going to be rushing to give him another one if they can give one to Downey, and then also maybe even Ryan Gosling from Barbie. If that movie really blows up, that he could certainly be in that mix as well. But he is great. I mean, he's great, no doubt. I think comparatively to Cillian Murphy, I think Cillian Murphy is just outstanding, like unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
I think he is unbelievably good in this movie.
No, I think I was more high, I guess, on Robert Downey Jr. I thought I was blown away by him. I thought he was fantastic, especially after seeing Iron Man for so long. It was good to see him back in, something that was not Iron Man. No shade to Iron Man, but he was so, just the character was so despicable and hateable, but he was so good at it while he was playing it. And Cillian Murphy, obviously great. Emily Blunt really impressed me. When she doesn't have a ton to do like throughout, I guess, especially when we get to the trial, because she's mostly I feel like probably the first 20-ish minutes, she's like out of focus, sitting on the couch behind him, listening in. But when she does finally get to take the stand, I don't know if that's what they would call it, since it's a very closed doors, not a real trial. But when she gets her chance to answer questions, she brings a level of savageness and sass, but also class, that was just so enjoyable to see, saying what everybody, as the only one who is trying to get Oppie to fight, that she was finally bringing that energy and doing what the audience wanted to see with Jason Clarke's asshole interrogation. So to be the voice of us, I thought she was fantastic. Florence Pugh is obviously great. I'm trying to think. Benny Safdie, he was good. Really,
he was great.
It's really just like I said earlier, a who's who of these cast members. Matt Damon was great. I don't think there was anyone that was. Here we go. Alden Ehrenreich. That was. I haven't seen him in anything. I haven't seen him in anything since Solo, I don't think. But to have him go toe to toe with Robert Downey Jr. as he was charming and able to like finesse his way into Strauss's group, but was also just like, again, being almost the voice of the audience, fighting back with what we wanted. So he was delightful to see, and I'm glad to see him getting some love here.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's really, and I don't even want to like go into like a ton of detail or like list off every single person, because there's so many, but I mean, there's not a weak link. I mean, if someone shows up for a scene and delivers 1 or 2 lines, they crush it. If it's someone who shows up for half the movie, they crush it. If it's someone like Cillian Murphy who carries the entire thing on his shoulders, he absolutely rises to the challenge and knocks it out of the park. I mean, there's really, some of the best performances are the ones that stand out the most are those ones that are for a single scene and then they're gone. People that I forgot about that were in the movie or I didn't realize were going to be in the movie, they show up and they, that's that's their
Rami Malek
appearance.
like
And
shows up and drops a couple lines towards the end, and then that's about it.
exactly, yeah. So it's just, I think that this is going to be very difficult to top, I think, in terms of ensembles this year. I think it's already my number one, and I'm not sure if there's anything that can surpass it. I'm sure it'll be in the mix for like, SAG, ensemble best cast of the year when that comes around. And that could be one of the big reasons. I mean, the actors branch is the largest branch of the Academy. There's probably going to be a lot of support for all the actors in this movie and the movie overall. That could be a big, way for it to get in and win Best Picture potentially. Just because I think Nolan has never done as good a job with a cast in terms of casting and performance that he was able to get out of actors than he has in this movie, which probably goes a long way to making it one of his best, if not best movies. I think Cillian Murphy, I mean, he's gotten one person in his whole career nominated for an Oscar, and that was, of course, Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight, and he won. I mean, he could be getting 3 people nominated potentially in this movie for an Oscar between Cillian Murphy, an actor, Robert Downey Jr., supporting actor, as we mentioned, even Emily Blunt potentially. I don't know if I would necessarily go all the way there with it, but I could certainly see a scenario where that happens. She gets nominated. I don't think she's ever been nominated for an Oscar, so that would be, pretty significant. This may be her best chance yet. It's definitely, I think a lot of people, myself included, were overlooking the potential of the cast, and maybe outside of Cillian Murphy and just some of the other big names that we all knew could do well. But because Nolan has never really been a super, at least in my opinion, performance 100% focused director, people mostly think of the cinematography or the score and the effects. I think he has, again, that melding kind of the best of both worlds in this one. And I think that's, again, another reason why people are saying it is his best, or it's at least a culmination of everything that we've seen from him.
Well, switching over to the actual story here, I don't know about you. One thing that I was curious about while watching it, I don't know if this would be considered a spoiler at this point, you're over an hour into our podcast, so I apologize. The bomb goes off at about the 2/3 mark, pretty much like on the dot. And then we still have a whole nother hour of the fallout of everything. So that's like obviously a climactic moment, but then we still have a whole third of the movie to deal with. That kind of came as a surprise to me. I didn't know how or when that was going to go off. The bomb being the test, the Trinity test, when they first detonate it. I was kind of surprised by that, and then was like, okay, well, what are we going to do now? But then I thought that the final third was probably the strongest portion. Again, this was a 5-star for me, so it's strong all the way through. But to lose no steam after the intensity, the buildup of this is what we're working towards, and then have it happen and still, get even stronger during that final third where we're seeing the fallout, we're seeing not seeing, but hearing about the actual bombings in Japan. We're seeing the results of the different trials that are unfolding for Oppenheimer and for Strauss both. I was very impressed by that fact alone, that there was not a fall off, or that it didn't lose its way after the biggest thing occurred.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that necessarily. I kind of had my suspicions that he may go that route, and that there was going to be quite a bit after the test. I think the test is pretty subversive, to be honest with you. Like, I don't think, maybe I'm this is a hot take, or maybe I'm kind of an outlier here, but it wasn't what I expected from going into the movie and kind of what we had seen in the marketing and everything. I think that part of what Nolan does is of course, he knows everyone's showing up because they know that there's going to be this test sequence, and certainly the test sequence is incredible, the way it's edited and the effects and the way it's captured and everything. But it's not like a glorification or like some, it's not a real like true spectacle in my opinion.
Mhm.
Like it's not something where it like the test countdown ends and they detonate it and then it's like wow, it's just like an elongated like 2 minute scene of like the bomb like exploding and the implosion and then the burst of light and then the
Right.
cloud goes up and like the debris flies everywhere. Like it's like almost kind of like pieces and like glimpses. Like it's not, there's never really a clear, almost like clean cut view of it. And it's certainly not something where you get like a proper like in order like sequential look at the explosion. Like it's kind of cutting between different
There's no
people
just
looking
giant
at it.
mushroom cloud that you see from start to finish.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And also just even the way that the actors and the characters respond to it and the way that they view it. We're cutting between different locations, different characters, close-up reactions. Um, and also the think of this, the sound. And again, the
Mhm.
sound in this movie is incredible. I mean, it's used
Haven't
so
even talked about
intelligent.
the score yet either.
Yeah, we definitely have to talk about that. It's just so intelligent the way that sound is used. And I think Nolan has gotten some flack in the past for the way he uses sound. And some of that is valid. Some of it I feel like is a little overblown, but he uses it so smartly and again subversively, I think, in some ways. But with this the test sequence, it's this huge countdown. The score is swelling for like 5 minutes straight. You hear all the different people getting in position and all the different like technical elements of the bomb coming into place and you're just bracing yourself because you're all you expect is just the loudest explosion you've ever heard in a movie, like at least in a Christopher Nolan movie. And it goes off, and there's nothing. There's no sound.
Mhm.
There's it's not silent necessarily, but there's not a big burst of energy. And you're waiting, and it is kind of implied earlier that there's going to be a delay, of course, because of the distance and the size of the explosion. Um, so there is a delay, and then when the sound kicks in with the explosion, in maybe 30 to 60 seconds after the fact, it is kind of a shock or almost like a jump scare, but you're almost kind of prepared, but like not really on edge about it. Like you kind of know what that it's coming. Um, but it's not like what I at least what I was expecting. Like it wasn't just this big burst and like then that's it. Like it's over. Like it was kind of a weird sustained shaking and like the energy of like the blast like coming out at everyone that was watching it. So for me, I thought that it was kind of interesting. It was almost like Nolan kind of saying to the audience, like, wow, like I don't know, like you were really waiting for like this this test sequence for like the last 2 hours. And I'm not gonna give it to you like maybe exactly how you pictured it or like how you thought you were going to get it.
Mhm. And I one thing just specifically about the sound, from the start, you have the bits and pieces like at different intervals in the movie of hearing the sound of what you think is going to be the explosion when it's like just the overwhelming when it cuts to like the different visions or like I don't even know what you would call it, the imagery of atoms and whatnot, the
Yeah.
sparks, the explosion, all that. And then I was really intrigued to see that we learned that that's not actually like the sound of the bomb, but that's instead the
Oh
sound
yeah.
that Oppenheimer hears later of all of the fans, all of the people like
Yeah.
stomping on the bleachers to serenade him, to reward him after the detonation, the successful test. So I guess after the actual bombing, when we hear that. So I thought that was interesting that like this sound was supposedly going to be like the sound of the devastating bomb, but instead it was like almost a different haunting sound that as Oppenheimer then learns to grapple with everything that he has led and kind of has that horror that maybe it's not the detonation of the bomb that stuck with him, but instead the noise of people cheering about this horrible weapon that he has introduced to the
Yeah.
world. So that was a very
That was
cool and
brilliant.
unexpected thing.
Yeah, again, Nolan subverting your expectations and using the sound, especially as part of that. I think, yeah, and in the imagery um, of that as well. Yeah, I think that's a great point. And the score, though, to cutting into the sound, I think this is just to get it right. I think Ludwig Göransson, he's been very very popular and hot in the last few years from Black Panther was his breakout, and he won an Oscar for Black Panther back in 2019. And then he collaborated with Christopher Nolan on Tenet when Hans Zimmer decided to do Dune instead, which I think worked out best for probably both parties. And then, of course, Hans Zimmer doing Dune Part 2, Ludwig Göransson doing Oppenheimer. I think that this is his best score, I think, and it's has all the elements you would want. I think it has such a great variety of sounds, and it's gorgeous. It's terrifying. It's just, and it's so heavily used throughout the film too. I mean, listening to the score, I listened to the entire score. It's like an hour and a half.
I feel like you saying that it's only an hour and a half is surprising, because it seems like during the actual movie that there's always music, there's always an undertone of the score, except for like during that silence on the actual detonation. And that was such a big part of the setting the stage of the intensity of like the sort of like, you know how there's always like the music and the ticking in Dunkirk, to make that comparison again, that like that was sort of the propulsiveness of what's keeping this conversation, this dialogue, these events unfolding so quickly, that I was like, oh, and it also made it that much more meaningful and noticeable when everything goes quiet during the explosion. I don't know if that's just like if I just felt like that was the case, or if that actually was the case, but the score was just so important and so prevalent throughout this whole movie.
Yeah, no, it's very prevalent, and I'm glad it is, because it's beautiful. And I think, people kind of compare and contrast, kind of make it a competition. I think Göransson, he has elements of Zimmer in his music. I don't know if he's like is influenced by Zimmer. I think Nolan probably has a certain aesthetic that he wants out of his music and his films. That's, that Zimmer has worked with him in the past on, and Göransson is kind of filling that role. But I don't think, I don't think the movie is worse because, Göransson rather than Zimmer, that it would be worse if Zimmer was doing it instead of Göransson. Mm-hmm. I think that there would maybe be a difference between the two, but it would still fall in the same kind of lane that Nolan would kind of demand from them. I mean, the last movie Zimmer did a score on, for the last 3 movies that he did a score for, or a couple, Interstellar and Dunkirk. I mean, he got Oscar nominations for both of those movies, and those are 2 of his best scores that he's ever done. So I think people try to kind of diminish and like really pit them against each other for whatever reason, but I think Zimmer has his issues, and those are pretty well documented. But I think at the end of the day, still, I think that they are 2 great composers. I'm excited to see. I mean, Göransson, as of right now, he's got to be the front runner for the best score of the year and hopefully an Oscar win. Mm-hmm. Zimmer, he won an Oscar for Dune. He'll be back. He's doing Dune Part 2. We'll see how that compares. I'm just excited that they're both doing like such top work, and I'm definitely going to be listening to the score pretty frequently, I would say, over the next few months between now and Dune. So I'm gonna get good use out of it, just even outside of the movie.
Absolutely. Not to Rebecca's disappointment, I was listening to it as we were driving around before heading out for a night out on Friday, and I don't know if that was really the vibe that she was looking for to get pumped up for a night on the town, but it was really doing the trick for me. So that's gonna be my go-to here for the next foreseeable future.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's great. It's great music, man. It's just, it's especially if you're working, if you're doing some writing or doing some chores or something like that. I think it'll get you moving.
Absolutely. I will say, I saw a tweet about this, and it's so true. The part at the end, this is not related to the score, but when they're after like the vote is held for Strauss's trial or his confirmation, that when they mention JFK, you mentioned the movie JFK earlier, but when they're like, it was a young senator from Massachusetts. What's his name? Kennedy, John F. Kennedy. Like the way that they delivered that, someone pointed out that it's like a Marvel Easter egg, like as if Nick Fury had been like, yeah, there was a superhero that Miss Marvel, we saw her. Like there had been like the way that they had cut to that it was almost like, okay, well, are we gonna get like John F. Kennedy will return in the post credits or something like that?
Yeah.
So that was so funny. It just like felt very out of place, but the way that they shoehorned that in there to make sure that it was very clear. But no, I thought this was great. Obviously the other, we don't have to get into all of the big discourse of the pro atomic bomb, all that stuff. This is a movie, just to put it
I'm
simply,
very pro atomic bomb, Zach. I just want to be very clear on this.
and so is
point.
Christopher Nolan, apparently. No, like if you actually go and see this movie, you will very quickly realize that is not the case. And the largest emphasis of this movie is put on grappling with the consequences and the fallout and the guilt and everything that comes with it, and how quickly. That's one of the other big things with the detonation, that while some people are celebrating, like it's very quickly like goes from, this is like the science that we have been doing, and that's like what Oppenheimer and the scientists enjoy, to then being like, okay, this is now not theory, this is reality. And
yeah,
now reality has consequences, rather than it just being like a science project that we were working on. And so that was such an impressive shift of tone in Cillian Murphy's performance, but also just in the movie overall, once that goes from idea to reality.
yeah. No, I mean, there's just, I mean, we could go on and on. I mean, it's such a long movie, and there's so many great nuances and parallels and things that kind of rhyme and move within and without each other throughout the movie. I mean, I'm really excited to see it again today. I'm ready to get to the theater, but yeah, I think it's one of the best movies of the year, if not the very best movie of the year. One of the best movies, if not the best movie of the decade so far. One of Nolan's best, if not his best. I mean, we could really go on and on. So I certainly recommend it. I'm very high on the movie. I'll be even higher, I'm sure, after today, seeing it again. And I'm grateful again that this, like Barbie, at least to my standard, lived up to the hype and is being received so well, not only by critics and audiences, but the box office is thriving, and hopefully will continue to thrive. We need more movies, more great movies to go see and get people in the theaters.
Two big budget original IP. I mean, Barbie's based off of toys, but it's not a sequel. It's not a franchise. These are two original stories that are being told and making money, having great success. So it's wonderful to see. But that's our episode. Thank you so much for tuning in week and week out. We appreciate all the support and would not be able to do any of this without you. So thank you.
Yes, thank you all so much for your support, tuning in as always. Go check out the website. There's good stuff to read over there. We'll have more coming your way soon. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, like us on Facebook, and also head over to YouTube, subscribe there. Videos, interviews, all that good stuff from Zach. And those accounts and pages can be found at Inside Film Room.
And while you're at it, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. We're on Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon, iHeartRadio, YouTube, anywhere you can find a podcast, we are there. And be sure to come back next week for another episode. We'll see you then.